Hello, welcome back for day 108. So today I'm going to be doing a recap of my life drawing session that I had last night. So I had a 3-hour life drawing session at the Art Students League of New York. And it was partially instructed by Greg Kreutz, which is who I'm taking kind of like one of these studio classes with. And I've been talking about this periodically and we'll continue to elaborate on it in the future. Overall, actually, my session yesterday, I would say, was not great. I didn't have my best life drawing session. And what I've been trying to do here is do a recap where I turn the camera around and I go through my sketches and we kind of talk about them, and I might even like make some edits and draw on them and everything and just kind of talk about them. But unfortunately, in my 3-hour session, I only really had one drawing that I liked, that I feel comfortable showing. Everything else was pretty amateur and pretty... I was really tired just because, like, I don't know, whatever. I was really tired that day and I just, like, couldn't get into a rhythm. Like, I couldn't get into that flow zone, that flow state of, really drawing and really, connecting with the pencil and connecting with the subject. However, I ended up getting that at the very end of the session. At the very end, we did a 45-minute pose. So it was like 20 minutes of the pose, then a 5-minute break where I could still work on the drawing, but I wouldn't have a model, and then 20 minutes again of the same pose. So 45 minutes in total of working on the same drawing. And it's been a while since I actually did 45-minute drawing from life. And it was actually like a really great experience. This ended up being what I needed to kind of get into the rhythm. Like, it was kind of at the end of, like, maybe after 15 minutes into the first 15 minutes that I was finally starting to get into a rhythm, and then I was able to carry that through for the next, for 30 minutes of this drawing. And so, I have the drawing up on the screen next to me that I did, and I'll just talk a little bit about it and why I think I like this and why I want to share this drawing. So first of all, proportionally, it's actually quite accurate. It looks like there's some mistakes, but the legs of the model were actually kind of skinny relative to the rest of their body, and they're a little bit foreshortened the way that the angle that I was sitting at. Now, I may have made a mistake with that by copying the model exactly and not trying to fix this issue. It's kind of the job of the artist to design a little bit what you're drawing on the page. So, in retrospect, I actually would have liked to have, made the proportions maybe feel a bit better, even if I feel that they actually were accurate to the model. It would be better for me to design them in such a way that they feel a little more accurate to the viewer. But that being said, I think the upper body actually reads pretty well. And there's a few things that I like that I kind of wanted to highlight for reasons that I think this is successful. And the first one is, I think I actually had nice control of values for the first time in a while, actually, which is really kind of a nice feeling. And I did this by keeping the light areas light and the shadow areas dark. There is a very clear separation between areas that are in shadow and areas that are in light. In fact, most of the drawing is in light. Almost the entire thing is in the light zone. There are shades in that light, like shades within that halftone, but really the only shadow areas that I really have are, for example, underneath the arm, next to the head, and maybe like a couple other areas throughout, but those are the big ones. And this, I think, really helps give, like, this is like the kind of value control that I really am after and that I want to look at and work with a little bit. And on that note, I also used something that I have heard before, but was like reiterated to me by Greg in the class, which is this idea of fall off, meaning that your lightest lights will often be at the top of the model or closest to the light source. Like if you have some kind of overhead, wherever your light source is, your lightest lights will be closest. In this case, in almost all light drawing session, the light is, supported on either like a stand or a beam or something like that. So almost always at the top of the figure. And then the halftones kind of emerge as you go further down the figure. And I use this technique, and I think it's really helps give this like kind of nice three-dimensionality to the body. So that was kind of a cool thing. The other thing that I learned is if you look above the shoulder on the left side of the drawing, so the right side of the sitter, there's a dark patch and a dark area, and likewise next to the thigh. This was actually super deliberate. So the idea here is this is a means for getting away from outlining. So when I first drew this in, I actually had an outline there. But what I actually got this like a direct feedback from Greg, where he said, "Why don't you try putting a dark patch there to see what would happen?" And once you do that, that dark line for the edge of the shoulder now feels like it's part of the background. It's blended into the background. And so you totally lose that outlining effect, and it gives a little more realism, or like a little more feel of realism to the figure. So that was like a really nice technique, or a really nice tip that he gave me. The other really nice tip was this idea of overlap, which I want to do a whole video dedicated to this, because it's something that I have heard before, and I just kind of heard it and let it be and didn't really think about it too deliberately. But yesterday it was like we were told to like really pay attention to this idea of overlapping, which is this idea that things in the body are always overlapping. So on the left arm of the figure, so the right arm, the one that's going behind the back, you can see that I really tried to abuse this notion of overlap, where I took an overlap from the shoulder, from the deltoid muscle, and then I took an overlap around on the elbow, and then finally like overlap underneath the body. And I think that's why there's such a nice feeling of dimensionality on that arm relative to the other. So this were like kind of the two big lessons of this, were the value control and the this idea of overlap. I also would like to be able to do a little bit better on the portrait. I didn't really have enough time. You know, there's something that the 5-minute head studies will help me do better on. But it would be actually been cool to like spend some real time on the head as well, and like try and create a full figure. It would have been pretty awesome. So let's see though in the future. And that will be everything for this video. Just me kind of sharing, not really drawing, just sharing about my experience. And we will talk again tomorrow for day 109, I believe.